afternoon, good evening, everybody. I am Charles Drayton, and I am really excited for today's presentation about understanding Microsoft agents. The topic today is going to be the knowledge and evaluations that will make your agents smarter. We have a couple of really special guests on here, Vid, Hardik, and Efrat. Vid and I have worked together for a while now on a couple of really fun AI type projects. So Vid, I'm really excited to have you as our guest today. And I'm looking forward to what you have to present. Now, everyone, stay tuned until the end of this presentation because we actually have a special announcement to make as it relates to AI agents. So don't go anywhere as soon as it's done. I think you're going to be really excited by the announcement that we have to make. So, with no further ado, Vid, Hardik, the show is yours.
Thanks, Charles. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're obviously excited to be here to talk to you about knowledge sources in Copilot Studio, how you could get your Copilot Studio agent set up best for to have the most accurate responses and actions. We'll tell you a little bit about our latest advancements, but before we jump into all of that, I wanted to sort of set the stage for us on why we're talking about agents today and why we're talking about knowledge sources. So as we jump into it, I think the first concept that I wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page on is what Microsoft is seeing out in the world of new companies that are being formed, which are what we're calling frontier firms that are organizations that are human-led but agent-operated. These firms are like buying intelligence, AI, like it's electricity. Then they're giving that sort of power to their employees or putting it to work as like their employees and then compounding it like interest. So in a world where every organization is either going to become a frontier firm or be disrupted by one, these sort of small companies are serving as our crystal ball for the new patterns of work that will redefine what business is, what education is for decades to come. And what we are seeing, as you'll see in sort of the next slide, is or next few slides, is the three patterns of work. So the first pattern of work that we're seeing is the notion of an AI assistant. So people are buying intelligence like electricity and then putting it to work like an assistant. So this is where our offering here is M365 Copilot. It helps answer questions, helps me work better, do things faster, and get things done in a more organized manner using all the knowledge from my corpus, and it serves as an assistant. There are firms out there that are using agents as AI teammates or digital colleagues. So this is where they're building simple agents to take on specific tasks at human direction and then executing on them, especially if they're repeated processes that ensures that that human who's working with all these agents can get all of their business processes done faster, driving higher throughput, and getting more done with the same set of resources that they have, except they've got this new resource called intelligence that they're buying. And then there is where Microsoft is trying to go, where we're seeing most of the born in AI or AI native firms that are cropping up slowly, which is where the humans are setting direction. So they are providing instructions, they're providing sort of the templates and all the essentials required to do repeatable work. And then they're using agents to run entire business processes. And the human's role is primarily to verify, to check in where needed, and then to approve the execution. So processes can be fully automated with humans providing oversight and validating any outliers that may exist. So what we are seeing going forward in the future, and this is coming from IDC as well, is this: we're at the crossroads of a major transformation, which is innovation is happening at a sort of pace that we haven't seen before. And this is where we're seeing all firms jump into this opportunity to rethink how work is done. So AI is providing the intelligence, agents are enabling new possibilities for you to do a lot more with the limited set of resources to do so. And what IDC is telling us is that by 2028, you'll have 1.3 billion agents out in the wild, which is all of our customers and even our non-customers are going to go out there and use platforms like Copilot Studio to build these 1.3 billion agents to transform processes in their organization. And then a lot of those are going to be in that pattern 2 or pattern 3. So our answer to this, as you'll see in the next slide, is Copilot Studio, which is the platform to build, manage, and secure agents for everyone. So this isn't specific to people who are code first or pro code devs. Anyone can use them. Who can code maybe how to add 2 numbers up in Python, use Copilot Studio pretty frequently and use it not just to demo to my customers, but also try to transform some of my processes using agents. And the Copilot Studio spectrum spans from like this simple M365 Copilot agent builder, which you get as part of your M365 Copilot product, which does some of the automation that leads to more personal productivity, to Copilot Studio, which is our flagship product, which has a whole set of tools, knowledge sources, etc., that can build more robust agents, including those that are autonomous. And then you have advanced extensibility. If you are a pro dev, like you love living in pro code environments, then you have pro dev tools like the SDK that you can use in VS Code and use along with Microsoft Foundry to make your agents more advanced. And for, as you'll see in the next slide, for enterprise leaders and sort of IT decision makers who are looking to build their future with AI, they're probably going to want their process owners and SMEs to build agents. And Copilot Studio is the most intuitive agent development platform. It offers not just a secure, it's an enterprise-grade security and governance guarantees that Microsoft offers on a large scale, but it's also a SaaS platform, which means it is, you don't have to do all the work of setting up capacity, and you can quickly deploy and scale rapidly. You don't have additional maintenance costs and stuff like that. And it's a very intuitive platform. And you'll see this as Hardik demos goes through some of our demos today. You can easily select your knowledge sources. You can easily select the models. You can easily select tools and channels. So basically all you need to know is what is my process, and then you could be rapidly prototyping just using natural language. You don't need pro code capabilities, so to say. So if you look at the next slide again, we talk about, okay, now you're going to go into Copilot Studio and build agents. What's the anatomy of an agent? In its simplest form, an agent is built on foundational models, of which we are a model agnostic player. So we have models from OpenAI, Anthropic. You're going to hear more announcements on models in the near future from other players. And we're trying to be truly model agnostic so that you have the power to select which model you want your agents to run on. But then there's the orchestrator that helps make all the decisions and helps direct the agent to do whatever the next step is. It has the autonomy and logic in it. Then there are tools like your MCP servers, or the ability to tap into like some of your other LOB apps, or the ability to call APIs when you need information, or you want to read, write, update in other third-party platforms. And then there is knowledge, which is our focus of attention today, which is the grounding and memory for your agent. So this is where your agent gets all the knowledge that it has to do the things that it needs to do. And this is all built with a user UX layer, which is our Copilot Studio product. And if we're going to zero in on knowledge, Copilot Studio can be connected to a variety of knowledge sources, as you'll see in this upcoming slide, from M365 knowledge sources. So if most of you do have your data in M365 with your SharePoint, Exchange, Teams, working on Word, Excel, PowerPoint files, that's a knowledge source that you could tap into, but you could also tap into your Dataverse knowledge sources, especially if you're a Dynamics user or Power Apps users or Power Platform connectors that you use to hook to other LOB apps. You can use Azure as a knowledge source, which has where you can pull in your vectorized indices from Azure AI Search, or you can use Azure Databricks to pull in information and inform your agent grounded, or you can use the internet and file uploads, as well as the third-party LOB apps I mentioned. So this is sort of context for where we are. Hey, we're seeing this behavior of frontier firms. There are 3 patterns of frontier firms across assistant, colleagues, and operators. And then the people who are doing this operator model are probably going to drive the volume of agents that are going to come. We believe our offering of Copilot Studio is the most intuitive and complete offering that process owners and SMEs can build on. A key component of that is knowledge, and these are the 5 kinds of knowledge sources. So that's sort of some context. But before we dive deep into the latest advancements we've made in grounding of agents, I want Hardik to jump in and sort of offer what you've learned in terms of, or give us a sneak peek on how we should prepare our knowledge for an agent. I'm sure you're working with some of the best customers, some of our best customers out there, and they are doing good work in prepping and adding their knowledge to an agent. So why don't you offer us some grounding on how to get started?
Absolutely. I hope folks can hear me. Thanks, Vid. So yeah, I mean, knowledge is such a huge term, and it's also wide as well as deep. So, some of my learnings have been working with these customers is knowledge is vast. And if you think about enterprise knowledge, gone are the days where an enterprise is only using products from a single provider. And so today, if you look at a modern enterprise or a frontier enterprise, they use multiple systems for their knowledge. For example, for their IT, they might be using something like ServiceNow. For their internal documents, they might be using SharePoint. For communications, people use Outlook, Teams. And then there's also a lot of files that people have on their local machine. And then I think no enterprise can be at the forefront of AI if they are not using the power of the internet. And then they have their CRM data in either Dynamics or Salesforce and HR data in Workday. So knowledge is vast, right? So let's get it clear. Like it's if you want to build an effective agent, you might have to connect to these knowledge sources. And even in these knowledge sources, one other thing that we have to understand, if the previous slide was talking about the breadth, this slide talks about the depth, right? So knowledge is complex and it has layers. So what do we mean? So let's take an example of SharePoint. Now, even in SharePoint, there are like site pages, document libraries, lists, right? And even in, let's say, document libraries, you will have URLs, files, folders, images, right? Similarly, about SharePoint pages, you can think about there are modern pages, there are classic pages, and even in a page, there are multiple interactive elements or web parts to it. Right. So knowledge, it's not just like adding a SharePoint, but you have to be very thoughtful in terms of what knowledge source you are adding. Are you adding document libraries? Are you adding pages? Are you adding lists? Right. And accordingly, you might have to instruct the agent like what this knowledge source is about. Now, here's a classical example. I changed the company name, but this is more often or common than we would like. So here's an example of, let's say, Northwind Care, and this is their HR website, right, or SharePoint site. And you see here, even with maximum efforts and processes, over time, your knowledge gets a little messy. And this has been the classic problem of data staleness in any search product that you see, right? So in this example, you see there's like onboarding employees, and there is this misplaced document where it should be under the remote employees onboarding guide, but it is under like onboarding and bootcamp. The other issue is like there are duplicate data, right? So there is some folder which has some UK data and then United Kingdom, which are essentially the same, but for some reason, the process is not enforced as much as we would like. So there is duplicate data. And then not every artifact that you want to ground your agent on is accurate or current, right? So there might be stale documents. There are documents that are, policies that are being written. So you don't want your agent to use it yet, right? So this is a very typical scenario of how an enterprise data, even in SharePoint, looks like. Now, if you think about such data staleness, duplicacy, redundancy, and a confusing data to be present across the other knowledge sources, the problem just multiplies. And now, taking this as an example, my biggest guidance to my customers is, it's the agents are smart systems, but then because they are generative models, if you don't feed the right data, the models and the system will try to give you whatever information it can find, right? So it is important for you to model knowledge properly. And then in this case, what I would typically do is, first structure your data. So organize your data. If there are things that are missing or they're misplaced, we recommend them to organize it. Then remove duplicates, right? Or remove stale content. And then modularize. So instead of adding this entire SharePoint site, and this is, I think, one of my biggest recommended takeaway, right? Like people typically just add like, oh, we have an HR SharePoint site, so we'll just add it. And there's a lot of data inside it, right? But if you think about this, there are modules inside it. So the one is about policy, one is about guidelines, holidays, one is about benefits, and then there is a bunch of documents about bootcamp and onboarding. So instead of adding their entire SharePoint library as a single knowledge source, we typically recommend customers, why don't you modularize these? Now you can create each of these as like a separate child agent, or you can even create them as separate knowledge sources and write the description properly, right? Because if you provide better descriptions, then it is very informative for my agent to go and say like, okay, if the person is asking something about expense policies, then maybe I just need to go to these documents rather than looking at all the other documents, right? So yeah, I mean, hope this helps. This is how these are some learnings and how I would recommend somebody make their knowledge ready for the agent to be grounded on.
So that's super, Hardik. It's just like my kitchen where I need to keep my ingredients organized and modularized. Our best customers are probably finding out that they're doing the same with their knowledge sources, helps them cook. Huh? Why don't you give us an example though of like why don't we take some frontier enterprise and build an agent step by step and show us how to model this knowledge better? Why don't we actually go through an actual example?
Yeah, so I mean, see, when we started, we didn't have enough features, and I'm talking about like a year back. But in the past year, we have added more features with not only like these guidelines, but it also helps you model your knowledge better, right? So I'll give you a few examples. So let's say, I'm building an agent for enrollment or benefits buddy, right? So if you look at this agent, let's say if I want to add this website. Now this website is for US benefits Microsoft, but this talks about dental, right? And then we have vision, right? Instead of adding the root website, what we typically tell customers is, hey, if there is a website that serves a specific benefit or serves a specific intent, right? Why don't you add them separately? But then customers come and tell us, yeah, but I have these websites that are dynamic, and I might create new websites on the fly, and every time I have to go and update the knowledge. So one of the things that we have done is we have added support for PowerFX variables. So imagine, let's say even for dental benefit, you have a separate website for US and you have a separate website for India, right? And instead of adding those as statically and two different knowledge sources, what you can do is you can simply just add that website. And instead of, let's say, ENUS or something like that, you can simply say like, hey, I want to use like region and then maybe the benefit, right? So it will be like ENUS and dental or specific benefit that you're talking about. And then you can add it. So now what is happening is you are able to target specific websites based on runtime variables. So that is one of the features. Then in the previous slides, we also saw the issue where, there are a lot of stale documents in SharePoint. And so for that, what we have done is like, let's say, this is my healthcare plan, like, and you can see there are plans for 2025, 2026, and all the way to 2024, right? But if I'm building a benefits agent, probably I just need this year and last year's plan, right? So instead of adding the entire folder and then hoping that the agent would figure out what is stale and what is not, now what you can do is you can use some metadata filters, right? So for example, here in this knowledge source, I've added only use documents that are modified on and after December 2025. Right. So in that case, I have already constrained the repository that the agent has access to, and now the agent is getting more relevant data to use the best knowledge available for the questions that it might encounter. Yeah, these are two features, and we are adding more such features. For example, PowerFX variables, we are also adding it to SharePoint URLs, so you can dynamically target SharePoint URLs. And then we have also gotten a requirement where customers want to add knowledge, but then they don't want the agent to use the knowledge at will, right? For example, for sensitive topics. So now we have this feature where you can add a knowledge. And today, if you add a knowledge, the agent will use it whenever it seems fit. But if you have specific knowledge that you don't want the orchestrator to use, instead you want to handle it yourself in a topic, you can select this and you can say only use this knowledge when it is referenced by topic. So in that case, you have a specific knowledge, you want to handle it in a specific way, and then you can do it by ticking this checkbox, and then you author a topic, and in that you have a note where you can reference this topic. So these are some of the ways we are making it easy for our makers to model knowledge.
Fantastic. So this is very cool, Hardik. But I work with your team, and I know you've been working very hard to make some improvements to your RAG. So why don't you tell us some about some of those latest advancements that you've made with our RAG technology? What improvements have you made?
Yes. So in the past 6 months, our team has really looked like had to take a hard look at the way we were doing RAG. When we started, it was very rudimentary. So you get a query, you somehow rewrite the query with more terms that you think are relevant, or even the history of it, and then you make a single shot call. But then in the last few months, we have added something called as agentic RAG. So before I describe what that is, let me actually do a query. So in my benefits agent, I'm just going to ask it a simple query of like, what plan did I have in 2025, and can you summarize it for me? Right. And while my agent is doing that task, let me show you what each of these documents look like. Right. So here is a document, right, where like any other healthcare benefit document, this is like, okay, this is the company, this is the plan, it is effective this and this, right? And it has a huge table of what are the deductibles, what is the eligibility criteria, what are the doctors that the plan covers, and where they operate from, and so on and so forth, right? So earlier, if you ask what is my deductible, we would probably get like 5 chunks where the word deductible would be mentioned, right? But now I can do queries which take the entire document, right? For example, here I was asking, what plan did I have in 2025, and summarize it for me. So now you can see the agent went ahead and consumed the entire document rather than working on chunks. And then it created a comprehensive summary for me. Not only that, I can even ask like, hey, can you compare this plan with the plan that I have in 2026, right? So now, and let me also add maybe in a table format. So not only it's able to like work at a document level instead of chunks, but it can also compare two documents, right? So here, what the agent is doing is the agent is going through the documents, and then it is going to analyze both the documents and create a neat table for me, also calling out the key differences, right? So this is the demo, but then let's lift the hood of the car and see how we made it happen, right? So when people talk about agentic RAG, they mean several things, but at least the way we have implemented it is, this is our typical RAG pipeline before agentic RAG, where the request comes in, you do some query understanding, as I said, and then you make a search call, and then you summarize. And when you summarize just based on the chunks that you get, and you're only making one single short call to a noise layer, you are going to only get so useful answer, right? But then instead we took a hard look and we said, okay, if I give this task of, hey, here is my benefits document, can you summarize it for me? Or compare to documents, how will a human do it, right? So the human would typically just search in the repository, then they would read the top results, then they would pick the most relevant results. And if, let's say, each of those results is a document, if the document is short, you would probably just read it. If the document is long, and if you are just trying to compare the deductibles, you would do something like Control F and find the relevant snippets inside the document, right? And then if you encounter a table, maybe you'll write code to parse it, and so on and so forth. And this, happens in a repeated fashion, right? So if when you allow your agent not to just search, but instead give it knowledge along with relevant tools like search, read their entire file, and then you use an LLM to iteratively go over search, check for relevance. If you need more things, iterate, go search back again, open the full file, right? And this is not like something hard coded. This is what the LLM decides on the fly based on the query and the knowledge that is provided. And this is the reason, we are able to get better responses. So this is in a very high level explanation of how we have redefined our RAG pipeline. Instead of just query, search, and do whatever you can, query, search more, open file, whatever the LLM decides, get the most relevant content, and then generate and synthesize an answer.
So Hardik, these are obviously very meaningful improvements. But before I say anything, I don't know if you've hit the Copilot voice button on your device or not. I've got this like Ring Copilot. Oh, now it's on top of my icon, so I don't know what's going on. Teams is obviously deploying some new tech. Anyways, going back to our conversation, these are definitely meaningful improvements that you've made in the product to help makers with like building robust performant agents at scale. But a lot of our customers I've at least spoken to have their data in a more structured format, like in Excel files or in PDFs. And I know that you've spent considerable amount of time and energy to make sure our agents understand structured data really well as well. Do you want to take a few minutes to sort of walk us through what the work that you've done there and sort of the output of your work?
Yes. So, I mean, let me first kick off the demo, right? So here, I had an agent which was trying to answer questions for the end user based on unstructured content, right? Now, imagine if I had structured content, right? So here I have a policy insights agent, and I've given it access to, two of these Excel files, and these files are multi-tab, and it has all the information about, okay, which year, which plan, what region, how many members were enrolled, and whatnot, right? And so what I'm going to do is, to this agent, I'm just going to ask a question about, can you create a bar graph with the distribution of members in various plans in 2025, right? And so while the agent is working, let me explain you how we have, taken that idea of agentic RAG and, enabled also reasoning and grounding over structured data. So, you know, if you think about documents, unstructured documents, and what tools a human would need to answer any questions based on that, you would need a document parser, and then you would need ability to open the document or do control F and search, right? But now let's talk about structured data. If you want to also run structured data, all you need to do is you need to give the agent the ability to write and execute code, right? Now these LLMs can already write code, but then what you need to do additionally is give it a execution environment where whatever code it is writing can be executed, right? And so we're just building on that same agentic architecture. And when you talk about adding support for structured data, it's nothing more than just adding the tools that are relevant for that knowledge type, right? And so here you see that the agent, based on a question, it essentially just got the files, right? And it got the Excel file, and then it wrote code. And this is again an iterative loop. So we are lucky that this time it just generated code and it ran, right? But many times what happens is you will see the agent write some code and there are some issues, and the agent will look at those issues, it will automatically fix those, right? And ultimately it came back with a nice bar chart of what I was looking for. Right. Now let's do one more query, which is I'm going to ask the agent to, create a distribution, but also add a line graph for average monthly premiums, right? And so again, you will see the agent is doing that same thing. And mind you, the agent is not only looking at a single table, right? So the agent knows this file. The agent has understood like, oh, this file. So if you think about, the agent first went to that file, it understood that, oh, there are 3 tabs, and it kind of figured out, okay, which tab is the most relevant that can answer the question. And based on that, it converted that, loaded it into a data frame, and then it created a visual for us. And this is exactly what is happening right now as well. So yeah, this is how we have, taken a code interpreter as a tool and made it available as a native tool for all my agents to write. And because of this, what we have is we have enabled agents to answer business critical questions, which require complex data analysis. And behind the scenes, as I said, it writes code, executes that code. There's a runtime environment that the agent has access to. And then this essentially helps us build trust and reliability, right? So here again, the agent went ahead and created a line graph on that same, like you see here, like 55 to 84. And so the bar chart is still the same, but it added a line graph for monthly premiums.
Gotcha. So co agents are best positioned to understand structured data, is what you're saying. But does your team actually do any work to measure how a code interpreter within Copilot Studio works on the breadth of knowledge sources our customers' agents typically encounter?
Yes. So actually, we I don't know if folks have heard it already, but there is this new thing in the a new trend for product managers. It's like, product managers should be able to write evals, and this is exactly what we do. So all the team here, including product managers and data scientists, we write evals. And when we write evals, if you think about, okay, I want my agent to answer content based on, or ground on structured data, there is a lot of variations, right? So for example, let's say you have this sheet where there are multiple, we have this Excel where there are multiple sheets. You might actually have an Excel where there are 2 tables, which are like 2 different sheets, but then the name is not really aligned, right? So there are inconsistent column names. Then you might have missing columns. Then you might have, complex sheets where not each sheet is a table, but each sheet has multiple tables, right? And then you might also have multiple merged columns, right? And so what we do is when we are developing this feature, we consider each of these cases, we collect data for each of these cases, we write evals for each of those cases, and we when we write evals, we write assertions like, okay, if this is the file format and this is the grounding data, and here is the question, here is the answer, and when you produce the answer, here are the things that you should check. We also write assertions on top of code, like, okay, make sure that the data frame that you're extracting has so and so. Are you including these values? And you are also parsing PDF if it is possible, right? And so, yeah, we do write evals for each of these scenarios. And that is how we are able to build confidence with our customers as well as in our own product. Like, yes, our product can handle structured data regardless of how messy it is, and it is able to perform a reasonable job.
Gotcha. Super helpful. So I think just taking a step back, we've spent considerable amount of time talking about the breadth of knowledge sources we have in the product today. We've spoken a little bit about how prepping your knowledge for an agent works and how you should think about organizing, modularizing your knowledge so that your agent is best prepared to give the best answers or take the right actions. We've spoken a little bit about the advancements we've made with agentic RAG, with code interpreter, and how Copilot Studio agents are sort of best positioned to reason over unstructured and structured data. But that can't be enough, can it? Like, our makers have their own expertise, their own grading ability, if you want to call it that, that helps makes these agents better. These are the process owners, they're the SMEs. So what could they be doing to help to sort of round this off? Hey, there's a product side of the story, which we've spent a lot of energy on, like, hey, go prep your knowledge, and here are the advancements we've made. But what's the maker side of the story of getting good responses and good actions out of an agent?
Yes. So I think you touched a very critical point, which is, see, if you think about the product and the maker, the goal is kind of aligned, right? So both the maker and we as the platform providers want to churn out high quality agents. And the maker also wants to make sure that the agent that they ship is high quality, right? But then other important thing to note here is, these agents are no longer deterministic agents. So gone are the days where, you had 4 intents, and for each of those intents, you would go and author a topic, and you would very surgically handle the conversation. While it gave you greater control, it also was not really smart. So, those old age agents where you ask about what is my deductible, and it just gives you those 4 boxes of open a file, open an account, check account balance and whatnot, right? But now, so in this unstructured era, the promise of delivering high quality agents, I just want to mention that it's a co-ownership between the product and the maker. So then what is the contract? Like, is the product saying like, yeah, you're an owner for the quality? No. The positioning is such that any agentic platform, including Copilot Studio, should be able to give you decent quality out of box. But users really expect in this era is, higher 80s and 85s and 90% or more accuracy, right? And a platform by default will be able to give, let's say, 75, 80. But that last leap, right? That's where the makers need to really work hard in modeling the knowledge perfectly. And then even more importantly, the makers need to make sure that they write evals, right? Because I think a lot of any data scientist you ask would tell you like, okay, I can only write evals based on what I know, based on the exposure that I've had. But let's say if your data is separate, if your data is unique, if the way you model your SharePoint is unique, if the answers that you're looking for are unique, right, then you need to write evals. If you don't write evals, then there is no way you can even measure if the product is giving you the base accuracy. And we do have an evaluation feature, right? So for this agent, I did write an eval this morning, right? And it's very easy to use. I think Efrat on the call is here and she can explain more, right? But you can create a new evaluation. You can
wait, Hardik, how did you get here? Sorry, how did you get here from in the product?
Yes. So you just click on the evaluation tab.
Ah, gotcha. Thank you.
right? And you can create a new evaluation, and you can either generate questions based on your agent definition, or you can use your test chat conversation. So remember the two conversations I had in the test chat. You create your own test case. If you have a file that you can upload, or even better, what I've seen customers do is the first agent they create works, but not really high quality. And what people typically, or enterprises typically do, is they will dog food it. So they will create an agent. This is what actually we also did internally when we created Microsoft Employee Agent, right? So we created that agent, we shared it with like a limited group of folks who will bug bash it or use that agent day in, day out. And then whatever questions they are asking, you can actually download those sessions and create a test set out of it, right? And once you've created a test set, then all you need to do, actually, let me show you how we do it, right? So you go to evaluations, you create an evaluation, and I'm just going to use the sample evaluation that I created this morning, right? So here is my CSV file, and the product already shows you like, okay, you have this question, here is the expected response. Now, how do you want me to evaluate this, right? And you have all these methods available. You can compare the meaning. You can like if it is, let's say, something as a code interpreter, then you might want to do an exact match because you're looking for that exact number. Or you can look at text similarity. You can also look for some keywords that are present, right? I'm just going to say like compare meaning, right? And then it's going to ask me, what is my threshold? Like, do you want meaning to be exact? So then I will go through, a little more higher threshold, or you want like, okay, if it is touching roughly on the same point, then, it can be a lower threshold, right? So let's say I'm going to make it 70%. And now I've not only added a data set, but I have also given evaluation criteria and a data set. And then I just need to click on evaluate. And so now what is going to happen is the system is going to use my profile and interact with the agent as if I am interacting, ask those questions, get the response, compare that with the golden answer that I've provided or the expected response, and give me a score of how well my agent performs. Does it pass or fail? Right. So instead of let it run, but here is exactly what I did earlier. And here you can not only look that, okay, my agent is passing, but you can actually see like question was this, agent response, right? For example, what was my deductible, right? So expected response is 500, and your agent actually responded with like 500, and hence it is passing, right? So you have to write evals, is the point, and we have built a really robust feature for it. I don't know if Efrat, you want to come off mute and add anything else.
Yeah, sure. So agent evaluation basically has multiple components in the experience. After Hardik basically ran the evaluation, he will be able to run it again, as you said, and basically be able to compare those runs. So you imagine that you identify some issue within your agent, you're able to go directly to the agent, change the notes, update the topics, and more impact that you did on the agent, and then you will be able to feel much more safe in order to publish that in the production environment. So we have a lot of other components, a lot of new graders, classification graders, and invocation graders, which basically less rigid than the traditional graders that you are familiar with, more flexible, more native language that any maker will be able to write own specific criteria to evaluate, to validate the agent, to run them at scale. So if anyone wants to learn more, we also a guided process how to evaluate what are the best practices for evaluation. So use the feature, it's amazing.
And Hardik, I think both of you so much the last 5 minutes. I feel different pieces of information. You can do the work to craft your knowledge. There's product advancements, but beyond that, a key component of getting your agents to perform well in production is as you build them and as you maintain them on an ongoing basis, write evals and run those evals using the evaluations feature within Copilot Studio to measure if your answers that are similar to the right answers, and whether they're performing above a certain score threshold that you set for how your agent is responding to those prompts. And that don't just do it when you build your agent, do it every time you make a change to the agent. Like you add a new knowledge source or you add a tool. Make sure you run evals again to see if your agent's performing well. And on an ongoing basis, things change. Companies evolve, they do different things, and then knowledge gets updated. So on a continuous basis as well, keep running evals. That's the job of sort of the maker, to maintain the robustness of the agent, and the evaluations feature within Copilot Studio allows you to sort of do that. Is that a neat summary of the last 5 minutes in like in whatever 3 sentences, 4 sentences?
Absolutely. And I'll just make one more thing explicit here, which is, if you think about, hey, my enterprise wants to build this agent, it is like there's something called as building phase, and then there is maintenance or improving phase. And in building phase, you model your knowledge properly, you test it in the test plane, you do also come up with an evaluation set, right? But then once, let's say, the V0.1 version is shipped to your internet audience, then your job is, like, at least I feel, if I am a maker, then my job is keeping laser focus on what my end users are asking. Is my evaluation set capturing that? If not, update my evaluation set. Once I update my evaluation set, obviously there are new queries, so my score will go down. Then I go and edit my agent. So then you edit your agent, update your evaluation set, measure it. And it always goes in this loop, right? Like, let's say then you have V0.2, which is now, hey, now agent can also answer questions about, let's say, holidays, right? Say, for example, right? And then, your customers will be more demanding and they'll ask more intense, more questions. And that is when you, again, update your evaluation set, then make changes to your agent. Maybe you have to add new knowledge source, or maybe you have to modularize some knowledge sources, whatever, right? And then you measure. And so this is what I call, or at least what industry has been trying to introduce, which is, remember, in the old days, you had test-driven development, which is you first write test cases, and then you write a piece of software that passes those test cases, and then you add more use cases and more test cases. That was test-driven development. This is what we called as behavior-driven development, because with these non-deterministic systems, the only way to tame these is to have a really solid eval. And remember, your eval also matures over time as your agent matures, and your agent configuration, settings, and knowledge, and it will also grow with that expansion of eval sets. I don't know if that is too much, but if it just rings a bell, like, remember, behavioral driven development is exactly what this is, what I just explained.
No, that's super helpful. Well, Hardik, I think we've covered a lot of information. At the risk of cognitive overload for our attendees, do you just want to round it up and bring it home with some key takeaways for the group here?
Yes. So I think the key takeaway, at least for this session, is Agentic RAG comes to SharePoint, and then we are going to add Agentic RAG for all the other knowledge sources in Copilot Studio. We also now have introduced Code Interpreter as a basic tool, so that your agent can use a calculator, if you think about it, whenever it needs to do some data analysis or when it's dealing with some structured data. We have better controls so that you don't throw the kitchen sink at the agent, right? And you surgically provide knowledge such that your agent provides high quality answers. But all of this is of no importance unless you write evals, right? And so you have to write evals. And remember, evals is a never-ending game. You ship something, customers ask more, you update your evals, you update your agent, you evaluate, then you ship a next version, and it always goes in that iterative loop. So yeah.
Super. No, this was super helpful. Hardik, thanks for you spending all your energy walking us through all the advancements, what evals are. I'm sure the group really appreciates it, including how to model your knowledge, which I think no one ever talks about. Everyone says, hey, we've got the great breadth of knowledge sources, but no, I don't think too many people have spoken about how to actually model your knowledge so that your agent uses it well. With that, I think we're ready to pass it back to Charles, who did promise something at the start of the call. So, Charles, do you want to live up to your promise?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Hey, great presentation, guys. And as promised, I was going to make a special announcement. I think Understanding Microsoft Agents has been a really, really good series so far. So some of the feedback that I got from the community is this is great. I have lots more questions. There are lots of areas where, the presenters have touched upon it, but I want to go deep with it. I want to go a lot deeper with it. So one of the things that we decided to do is now introduce a community call around agents. And this community call is designed to allow you to have a more interactive session with the presenters. So we had some really great questions in here. My guess is, you'd get answers to the questions, and ideally you'd have follow-up questions, and then they'd have follow-up answers, and then it'd be an entire conversation around it. So I like Hardik and I like Vid. I want to put their feet to the fire a little bit. So I think this opportunity to start doing the monthly community call would be that opportunity for you to really dive deep. There are a lot of people who have questions about, okay, what was the point of putting, agent flows inside of agents? Why, or is it feature parity with standard flows in anything else that we might have? Is there a parity there? Is there going to be parity there? When would you do one versus the other? So many questions people have. And this is the kind of team who I think can really help to take your knowledge to the next level. So starting March 4th, we are going to be having a monthly call with communities. Now, ideally, it's going to be a little bit community driven, but also driven by Microsoft. So there might be some part of it that's going to be a presentation by agent-oriented product managers and program managers, like you saw with Hardik and Vid. Other times, it might be driven by you in a community. So if you are an agent person in a community and you would like to present something, let us know. Join us. Tell us that there's something you want to present. Some really great agent you built. Some topic you wanted to dive deeper in that you wanted to drive yourself. It really wants to be something that is a combination of content that is driven by us at Microsoft and by you in the community as well. Previously, we've had these kinds of community calls, but they've all been around things like Dynamics CRM, Dynamics ERP, the Power Platform, but agents are all over the place. So people have always said to me, well, I want to have something that's about agents. I don't know where to get like M365 stuff. Is it Dynamics? No? All right, so where do I get it from? So a place where you can all go and get all content related to agents is something that I think was missing, and we're going to be introducing it. That's something I'm really, really, really excited about. So stay tuned. We're going to be making the announcement on LinkedIn, but if you'd like to sign up for it, we have a link that'll add it to your Outlook calendar over in the chat. I also want to use this opportunity to encourage you to, if you have any ideas, topics, presentations, that you would like to deliver or you like to see delivered, reach out to me on LinkedIn or reach out to me here on the chat as well. And we're going to start putting together what the annual agenda is going to be for the rest of the year. So if there are topics you want to deep dive into, definitely let us know. That being said, Hardik, Efrat, Vid, really, really great job. I know people had a lot of questions. They're going to have a lot more questions for you, I think, coming up next month. But other than that,
is it safe to say we'll tackle some of the questions that we haven't tackled in chat today on that March 4th call?
Yeah, I'd say so. So if you didn't get answers to those questions, definitely join the March 4th call, and you'll get those answers and a lot more.